I have to serve people. That's obviously a thing with me. I can't not, like the cafe. That's another extension of like, I couldn't picture doing a job where I'm not serving someone.
That was Danny Montoya, owner and operator of the Butterfly Joint and Cafe. I'm Jeff, and this is Storied San Francisco, a podcast all about the artists, activists, and small businesses that make this city so special. In this episode, we pick up where we left off in part 1. If you haven't heard that, please go back and check it out. We'll talk about Danny's evolution out of teaching and into opening the Butterfly Joint, first in the Mission, and nowadays in the outer Richmond on Cabrillo at 45th Avenue. He'll share the story of how he and his wife, Erin Fair of Repco, met. And he'll talk about his approach to life, community, and his small business. Danny wants you all to know that he runs the Butterfly Joint while also being a staunch supporter of San Francisco public schools. Here's Danny.
So I was teaching there, and then I was about to leave. At Live Oak, yeah. Middle school. Mm-hmm. And then I was, summer comes, graduation. I was looking all around for jobs in the public school system. Mm-hmm. And then I get an interview at George Washington Carver, which is, I don't know if it's there anymore, but it was near the Bayview.
Okay. And
I, interviewed there, and then they called me maybe the next day, and they were like, "Oh, love to offer you this job, blah, blah." I was like, "Oh, awesome." They leave a number. I call the number, and it just goes to voicemail. I'm like, "Hey, this is Danny. Just met with you. I'd love to take the job," so on. And that goes on for the week. I just keep calling this number, keep leaving the same message. And then finally, at the end of the week, I call again. It's Danny. Hi, I've been trying to get a hold of you all week, "Oh, we gave that job away. We didn't think you'd want it." I was like, "No, I've been calling you all week." "Well, why are you calling this number?" "This is the number you gave me." "Oh, this is my summer program. I can't believe you're calling this number." And I'm just like, oh, man. So anyway, I didn't get that job. And this is like, midsummer.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of freaking out.
You're done with school.
Yeah, I'm done with school.
Come on,
like,
what's
this
next?
Is my first job. And I'm just like, I was in a pinch there and kind of freaking out. So
And this is 99?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So actually, you know what? No, because this was 99. It was I got my credential in 99 December.
Oh.
So then it was 2000, and then they, so I didn't get that one, and then I'm kind of freaking out. So I'm just throwing in spaghetti at the wall now. I'm just like whatever sticks, whatever. Mm-hmm. And then this one preschool, I applied for, they were like, "Oh, we'd love to have you." And I was like, "Oh man, that'd be great." And right then, Live Oak calls me and says, "We over-enrolled kindergarten. Oh, would you be willing to teach with our current kindergarten teacher?" I was like, "Oh man, I would love to." So then I took that kindergarten job, worked kindergarten with him.
The extra class.
Yes.
The over-enrolled.
It was over-enrolled.
Okay.
So I taught with him that year, and then I was about to leave again at the end of that year, but then the first grade teacher at that time wanted to teach second grade, so he moved to second, and then they asked me if I would do first, and I said sure, Mm-hmm. And so and I ended up staying there at that school for 11 years.
Do you want to share the story of how you met your now wife?
Yeah, no, she's the best.
And there's a connection not only to me personally, but to this podcast.
Oh yeah, no, she is one of the most amazing people I've ever met.
Yep.
About to cry.
You're good. All good. No shame in crying.
I know. She's the best.
Let's hear that story.
All right. It's a good one.
You need the water?
I know. She's just the best. We met let's see, 2005, and I was DJing, and I had a pretty strict rule for myself that I'd never date anyone I meet DJing.
Okay. That seems like a reasonable rule.
Yeah, because I just, that whole, like I mentioned earlier, that whole scene was not my scene. So.
And boundaries.
Yeah, it's just like, typically it was just I don't know. Again, I might be a little judgy here because it wasn't my scene, but they're just like the most annoying people in the world because they're just drunk and they're very selfish. They all want, like everyone thinks it's like their own personal iTunes, you know?
Yeah.
So it'd be annoying. So anyway, I was DJing. I had a weekly night at a bar called Swig that I think is still there.
What neighborhood is that?
That's in, I guess, what would that be considered? Tender Knobbish, I guess. I think it's still there. It's on Geary and probably Jones. Geary and Jones.
Okay.
Because I literally lived a block away.
Okay.
So I was DJing there every Friday, and I had it was the last day of school. So it must have been June something.
Okay.
It was the literal last day of school. So I was feeling all hyped. I was like, oh man, it's last day of school. I'm going to go DJ. It was such a good night. But as teachers, it was the last day of school for the kids, but I still had to go back the next week and clean up your classroom and all this stuff. Yeah. So I'm DJing, and then I saw her and her friends come in because it was a very distinct crowd there. It was not my, even if it were not my scene, quote unquote, when I was DJing, there would be at least people there that I'd be like, oh, I have something in common with you. This was not my crowd. I just did it solely. Like my friend who I'd met at Beauty Bar, who was a bar back, he then became a bartender, and then he became a bartender at this place. So then he was like, oh, my friend's going to open this bar soon, and we want a DJ. I want you to DJ. And I said, oh man, that'd be amazing. That's a block from my house.
Where you live,
couldn't be any better.
Yep.
So I just ended up there, but it was a very what do they call it? Bridge and tunnel, right?
Oh yeah.
It was that.
Yeah,
Bridge and tunnel. A lot of just people that are not my peeps. So so I saw them walk in, and I saw Erin right away, and I was just like, wow, she's beautiful. But again, I was just like, but I'm not going to talk to her. Like especially when, I don't know if all DJs feel this way. I don't think so, to be honest. All the DJs I know would date anyone they saw. But I was just like, I felt so... I never thought I would feel comfortable talking to somebody while I was DJing because it's kind of gross. So because I just felt like it would be gross. I'm just like, like I'm the person up here doing this thing, and like if I were to get down from here and walk over to you and be like, hey, I'm the like it's just there's no good way to broach that, like, hey, what's going on? It's
slimy.
It's just gross. Yeah. So I was just like, I can't do it. So I saw her and I was just like, oh man, she's so beautiful, but like, if for some weird reason she came and talked to me, then it's on and I could talk to her. But I'm like, I can't go and talk to them. And there was one moment, and the whole time too, like it's funny, we talk about it now and she brings it up too. Like she was looking at me, like we were both like interested in each other. Yeah. So she kept definitely like looking over her shoulder and looking at me, and I was just like, oh man, okay, But again, I was just like, I can't. There's just nothing I could do. I'm handcuffed over here. Yep. But there was one moment where I saw them dancing, and then the bar back came by and just like swooped all their drinks off of the ledge, and because all the empty glasses and everything were up there, and I was like, oh, this could be it. Like I could walk down and say, oh man, I just saw the bar back do that. Like let me go get you all drinks, But then even then I was like, so gross, because again, this is coming from somebody that doesn't drink. Right. So I'm just assuming, what would a person that drinks do? But anyway, it's not my character. Like I'm like, so gross. I'm like, it's so gross. I don't want to. I just can't talk to these women, So at some point, she just comes up to me and it was like, oh, do you take requests? And that was one of my other rules. I never took requests. I was always like, yeah, $700. Like I'm just like, I'm like, you are so annoying. Please stop asking for a request. Right. So she came up and she's like, oh, do you take any requests? I'm like, yes. Of course. What would you like to hear?
And the handcuffs are off.
Yes, and this was in vinyl days, so this was still vinyl.
Yep.
So it's like you get what you get.
Yeah.
Whatever I had on vinyl that day
Yep.
is what is available. I can't just magically download something for you right now or whatever.
Did you have it?
So I didn't. She asked for Gasolina by Daddy Yankee, and I was like, oh man, that's my jam, but I don't have that. I've been looking for it, but I can't find that 12, those like 12-inch singles, And she's like, oh yeah, oh, that's cool, whatever, And I was like, yeah, well, what's your name? And again, that's what I said is, if she came to talk to me, okay, it's on. Like we will chat, but I'm like, I couldn't make the move.
It's like that app Bumble, but in real life.
It was real life.
You were
But
letting her
even
do
that,
first move.
even you saying that, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah,
So I
well,
missed
okay.
that whole boat.
I'm
So
not dating
I never-
myself, but I guess I'm implicating myself.
Yeah. See, I missed that whole boat, and Red and I talk about this. And her name's Erin, but I call her Red. She has red hair, and so yeah, Red and I have talked about that extensively. That we're so stoked we missed that boat. No, we never had to do anything.
Right, you are lucky.
We were super lucky. But anyway, so that was
what time
it.
of year did this happen? I'm curious.
That was summer. So remember, it was the last day. It was the last day of school.
Oh, right.
And she was like, oh, yeah, so, do you DJ here all the time? And I'm like, yeah, but, I'm actually a teacher. So, because I was like, what do you do next week? Because I kept asking. I'm like, oh, do you want to hang out sometime? I'd love to hang out with you. And she's like, yeah, well, do you ride bikes? She's like, yes. And this is always the story I tell people is, so imagine this is a movie. And she's, I ask her that. You ride bikes? And she's like, of course. So then in the movie, the camera just quickly like pans to the side, and then it goes to her apartment, and there's a bike that's like locked up, but they can't find the key to the lock, and then it pans back to her face, and she's like, yeah, totally, I ride bikes, So she's like, of course. And I was like, oh, let's go on a ride next week, like we'll go eat or something. And I was like, yeah, I'm a teacher, so like today was the last day of school, so next week I only have to go in like Monday, Tuesday, or whatever it was, and then maybe we can hang out during the day. I don't know, because she was saying she was a server at the time, and she was going to school. She was finishing up at State.
Yeah.
So we made plans that night, and then we went on our first date the next week, and it was just like on from there.
Boom.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I knew Erin then.
Yeah.
My last semester would have been the fall of 2005.
Yeah.
And we worked on the magazine together.
Yep. Because we met, so it was, June 2005, and then she graduated the next year. Because I went to her graduation, and that's when I met her parents probably before that, but her parents came out, and we did a big thing. And, But yeah.
Let's fast forward now to the story of, and you've already kind of dropped some hints of how it came about and the kind of transformation that led you to open the original spot over in the Mission. Let's hear that story.
Yeah. So it was, like I mentioned before, I wanted to spend time with my kid. At the time we had one, we have two now, but I was trying to figure out what I could do that I still wanted to use my creative time and have free time to be with her. I knew I didn't want to teach in a school anymore, and I didn't want to be a woodworker. So when she was her first year, I was with her, and Erin was with her for the first 4 months, but then she had to go back to the magazine. She was an editor at a magazine at the time. So I was just dadding all the time, and it was the best. But at the same time, I knew once we put her in daycare, when she's 1 or whatever, I have to figure something out. And I still didn't know exactly what I wanted to do. I just knew I didn't want to woodwork because I was doing that at night. So I would be with her during the day. Erin would get off work, and then I'd go to the wood shop, which was a garage in the Tenderloin.
Okay.
So one of the apartments I had lived in on O'Farrell in Larkin, I had kept the garage the whole time. So I moved in there in 97 in that apartment, and I had the garage, and I kept the garage the whole time. I moved a few other times. I was always living in the Tenderloin, and then Erin and I ended up moving in together in the Tenderloin as well, and we were there 10 years before we moved to here.
Okay.
So when she was 1, we put her into daycare, but right before that, Erin's like, yeah, so it's been a year. What's it looking like now? And I'm like, oh yeah. So
those bills haven't stopped coming in.
Yeah. Red and I talk about this all the time, that both of us we're very similar in we work super well under pressure. So right when she kind of gave me that, like, so what's the deal? I was all, okay, I have a few ideas in my head. And right away I was just like, I don't know. One of the ideas was I kind of want to open up like a wood shop for kids. That would be cool because I loved woodworking when I was a kid. I got to do it in junior high, and we had it at high school. And it doesn't exist anymore. It was all stripped from the budgets. So I said, I think people would be into that, and I could do camps and like after school classes and all this. So
combining two talents and two passions, right?
Yeah,
with
but it was also combining two things that I didn't want to do individually.
Separately, yeah.
Because that's the thing is, coming from a school, there's aspects of it I love. Like I have to serve people. That's obviously a thing with me. I can't not, like the cafe. That's another extension of like, I couldn't picture doing a job where I'm not serving someone.
Yeah, and I've been watching you. You're a natural at it. I
mean, it's just like I can't. When people, again, going back to the like, I don't believe in God, and I couldn't follow this religion. To me, it's like when people think about like what's the meaning of life and get into these really deep meta conversations with themselves, which typically will lead them towards believing in something, a deity or following a religion or whatever. For me, it's like just being with people is kind of, I'm like, I don't really see what else there is. You know what I mean? Right. I'm just like, if it's not us being together, then like what else is there? It's like it's proven you can't be solitary. You can't, you know what I mean? So why are we here? Like, and that's the thing is I've never had that question. I've never had the like, I need to know a deeper meaning. I'm like, I've always felt it. That's the meaning. I like being around people. It seems like people like being around people, that they like.
You have inadvertently already tackled or addressed what I usually like to end the podcast. We're not ending.
Oh, sure.
But I usually like to end with asking my guests to respond to the theme of the show this season, which is we're all in it. That's you're speaking to that. Like,
that's and that's
it's not I'm in it. It's we're all in it.
And it's and to me that's just, and I haven't, throughout my life I never felt I couldn't verbalize that.
Right.
It was just, that's how I lived my life. And
you
then
didn't
as
have a choice.
I get older, I'm like, I see these patterns of like, when I was this age, I did this. And when I was this age, I did this. And you can look through all the decades and I'm like, I was always doing the same thing. I just didn't know that it was like a service,
right.
And now that I'm older, I'm like, like when people say service industry, I'm like, I totally get it. Like that, like once we opened the cafe, because that was, again, that wasn't the original plan. Like we were going to just staff this. Right. We were just like, we'll just open a little cafe, part of the shop. It would be cool. But then, a lot of different things happened. Like COVID happened and Erin got laid off from her job and she had worked in the cafe before. So she's like, I'll like help out with it, But then once we kind of started getting closer to opening and learning more about it, like my side is like, I really love fixing things and building things, and I like understanding how things work. So like the machines fascinated me, and I'm like, how do you make it so that it makes really good coffee? And again, that's another funny layer to the story is I don't drink coffee. So you know what I mean? So when we were calibrating all the machines, I'm like, I'm the one responsible for making sure the machines work really well. But then I hand it off to Erin. Yeah, I'm like, what do you think now? Yeah. And we would invite our neighbors, like, hey, come over for a taste. We want to make sure we're grinding it correctly, and the extractions are at the right time, and getting all our measurements down in our recipes. So I was more on that back end, like the chemist, but I don't taste, because to me it's like garbage. I'm just like, I taste it and I'm just like, this is so gross. I can't believe people drink this.
So where do you get your energy? Because
again,
for listeners,
just like,
I'm just gonna say you have some energy, dude.
Yeah, that's just a natural. Yeah,
just wired that way.
Like I don't drink. I wake up in the morning, and that's the thing too. People will be like, you're a morning person. I'm like, well, no. If I could sleep in, that would be amazing.
There's things to do.
But I have a lot of things to do, and that's the thing is, that's how I try to explain it to my kids. I'm like, look, I don't want to be up right now, but there are things I need to do. Yeah. and I'm going to get them done, and then I could hang out with you guys, or we could go play, and then I can do whatever. I can go on a run or do some selfish act. But to me, it's just more like there's just things you just do. You just get up and do it, you know. And I've never been like a complainer. Like, I don't like the like, I'm so tired, like the extra drama. I'm like, oh my gosh, or like, you know, I need my coffee, and I get that, but I'm like, okay, you don't have to advertise it. Just like get your coffee.
Just get
you know
your
what I
coffee.
mean? I'm like,
Shut up. Yeah.
You know, and I don't know. Again, like I don't know if that's a generational thing, or like maybe the group of friends that I grew up with, or like it came from family. But there was
I think it's your Colombian heritage. You were too close to it. DNA.
I was too
close to the source, man.
But do you remember? Like, I mean, you already said you're a little older than me, but do you remember all like which commercial was
Juan
it?
Valdez.
No, not that.
Oh, no.
Yes, Juan Valdez. But I'm trying to think of like it was. You know, the like never let him see you sweat. It was one of those commercials, like a deodorant commercial, or you know, Irish Spring, or one of those.
Yeah.
But I just remember like that was totally a cultural, not just that commercial. I'm just saying that was a mentality.
Yeah, for
like,
sure.
You know what I mean? Like you, and now it's the opposite. You want everyone to know all your mental everything. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm struggling, and like
Nike, just do it.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like
that was the mentality.
There was a mentality of just you just get on with your day. You know what I mean? And of course, like I've always been like and Red will attest to this. I am a talker, so I have zero problems telling anyone about my emotions or how I'm feeling or how I'm feeling about you. You know what I mean? I don't have any issues with that.
Right.
So I think for me personally, that's why like it's that kind of stuff has been. Not easy for me, but it's just like it hasn't been a thing. Like I have no. I guess I have this energy just naturally, but it's also I also have a part of me that I'm like, just complaining is just annoying. You know what I mean? So I'm just like, if you're gonna complain, then fix it. And if you can't fix it, why do you complain? And it's just like a never-ending cycle. And that's why like the San Francisco stuff always drives me crazy too, because people are great, and not
complaining's
only just
easy.
Here. Yeah,
complaining's really easy.
Not only here, just
doing something about it.
Yeah, just everywhere. It's
that's the hard work.
Especially once like the internet started going crazy and social media. It's all about just like shitting on somebody else's idea, but you don't have an alternative.
Right.
And that and I've never. That's never made sense to me.
Right.
You know.
This is really good stuff. I want to know where donuts came from.
Oh, so that was all accident. Yeah.
I think that's a great story.
Yeah, that was all accident. So
you make the donuts.
I make the vegan gluten-free ones. Yes. So again, this kind of just goes with the theme of like if you know me, you're like, "Oh, that makes sense." It's just
Let me guess, you don't eat donuts.
Oh, I love donuts. Yeah, that would be pretty good. Yeah, that would definitely be on brand.
That would be fitting,
I don't drink, But that one I absolutely love donuts. I love donuts so much that I'm not like a birthday cake person. So if it's my birthday, please get me donuts. Like I don't really care about cake. Cake's fine.
Sure.
But the donuts was kind of an accident. So like when we did start the cafe, and then we decided we do want to just be the cafe. The biggest goal was for it to be a community space. So, you know, the first weeks or whatever, all our friends or the neighborhood would come by and they'd ask, "Oh, so how's it doing? How's business doing?" I was like, "Well, I don't know. Like, are you speaking like monetarily? You know, because to me, it's not." When we even decided to do this, I was telling Red, if we break even, that would be awesome, because really the goal is just to like kind of bring the neighborhood together
and keep it going.
Yeah, and it be a place where, because the butterfly joint already was like, I was trying to make it a communal space, but just by its design, it was a little limiting because it's just people with kids.
Right.
So if there was just some like, you know, kids or people that moved in the neighborhood, they're in their 20s or 30s or whatever, and they're just walking by, they would be like, "Oh, I don't care about that place.
It's a kid place."
Yeah, it's a kid
people
place. So
kids.
It's like, that's not my community or whatever.
Right.
And once we opened the cafe, that was one of the goals. Is like, yeah, we want to make this inviting and so on. And there was all these discussions. That's the funny thing is like, whenever you create something or you start something, there's always the people that go to it, and then they'll give you this almost like either recommendations or did you ever think of this?
Unsolicited advice.
Yeah, and you're like, yes, we did think about it. And like if you know me, I think about everything like nonstop. So, and this is where it's, I'm a very life is a balance person. So even me saying I like to serve people and we're all in this together and so on, I'm a bit of a misanthrope.
Okay.
Like I don't like people.
Right.
To be perfectly honest.
I understand that dichotomy perfectly.
Yeah. Like
yes.
I love the people that I find interesting and love.
Right.
And most people become extremely annoying to me very quickly. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I do I think a good job at just being like, I get it, I understand it, and I empathize with that. But like, do I want to hang out with you? Probably not.
I can't remember the exact phrase. I saw a shirt a few months ago, and it was something to the effect of like, I'm a people person until the people get involved.
Yeah, like some. Yeah. And it's like, and it's one of those things where it's like I don't want to sound like a dick, but it's just I'm honest, and and everyone that comes here knows that about me. That like I'm a very friendly person. I try to be as polite as possible. I'm not going to be a rude to you, but at the same time, like there's things in the way my brain works that like. Humanity as a whole doesn't make much sense to me. So I'm just trying my best to just like get through this crazy ass life to try to, and again, it's like, it's the medium of like, I want to be joyous and I want to be happy. But at the same time, I'm just like, I hate when people say like the memes and all the like, find your happiness and find your passion
live,
and all
laugh,
this.
love.
Yeah. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's such trite shit. But I'm just like, but that's the thing is it's weird because people meet me and then they're just like, oh my gosh, you're so happy and everything's going well for you. And I'm like, well, kind of, you know what I mean? I'm like, I personally have never had an issue with doing what I want to do. And back to like at the very beginning when we first started talking about it, I was like, this is a place of privilege. Like, I don't know if that's because I grew up here or it's a little bit of both of like, that's the way my brain works and that I was offered these opportunities, but I've never limited myself. And I don't know if that's an intrinsic thing or if it's an environmental thing or both or whatever it is. But like when I left teaching, that was a huge thing with like the teachers there. They're like, oh my gosh, aren't you scared? Like, what are you going to do? I'm like, I don't know. Oh my gosh. And we just signed our mortgage. Like, we bought an apartment in the Tenderloin. And I can see how that would freak out a lot of people. But to me, I'm like, oh, no, I'll figure it out. Like, I know what I'm going to do. I don't know what exactly I'm going to do. But like, I'll figure it out, So anyway, that brings me to the donuts. So
here we are.
Over to the donuts. We wanted it to be a community place. So right away, I just wanted to figure out who in the neighborhood makes things that we could sell here that showcases the neighborhood. The one thing that was missing was donuts. There's no donuts over here, if you notice.
It's a donut desert.
It's a donut desert for sure. It's a DD. So the closest donut place is on Geary, like Central Richmond or something. Yeah. So when we had moved out here, I had found Twisted over in the Sunset, and I just went up to him one day and I was like, hey man, like I'm opening up this cafe, but I don't know if you do wholesale. I was like, oh, we really don't, but what are you thinking of? I was like, well, we don't have donuts over there, and I'd love to like give you some, a little push and a little advertising, and then also just have donuts for the neighborhood or whatever. And it's been a great relationship. His name's Paul Lim, and Paul runs Twisted Donut on Noriega in between 19th and 20th. And yeah, he's just been amazing. Like I'd go there every Friday, get donuts, and we were trying to figure out a gluten-free vegan one. So Paul, he was like, I won't do gluten or gluten-free because it's just too much cross-contamination. Like I can't dedicate a fryer just to that. Right. And I was like, oh man, I get it. Right. And Red randomly finds this donut pan on the street over here on 45th. Oh. At the restaurant right next door.
Yes.
For the listeners, there's a Chinese restaurant directly next to us, and they had thrown out this brand new donut pan. Maybe they were thinking of experimenting, I don't know. But it was just this brand new donut pan, and Red's like, oh, Danny.
It's a sign.
I saw this thing on the street, and I know you have a million projects, and you probably don't need anything else to do right now, but I don't know. It seemed like something you'd be into. And I was like, was it the donut pan on the sidewalk? Because I had already seen it. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, yeah. I was like, worst case scenario, I'll take it to Goodwill, but I'll do some experiments.
Give it a shot.
So I did some experiments. And at first I was like, oh, let me just see what like making a baked donut is like, a normal, just gluten-esque, donut.
Right.
And it was fine. I'm like, oh, but we do need a gluten-free something. And up till then, I was making cookies. I was making like some gluten-free vegan cookies because I just wanted to do two birds. I didn't want like a vegan thing and a gluten-free thing. And, I wanted to just do them both. Mm-hmm. So then I tried like some random gluten-free vegan recipe online, and it was not good. So I was like, all right, I think I just need to experiment with like flours. And so then I'm a big spreadsheets person, so I just had the spreadsheet.
Another
and I just,
way that we're aligned.
Yeah,
there
so
it is.
I just started doing all these experiments and just writing them all down in the spreadsheets and how many grams I use of each one, etc. So then
scientific method.
Yes, the scientific method.
Yeah.
And then, I was just making these tiny batches, and then we would just have them for dessert. I'm like, oh, I'm going to try this one. And it didn't take long. Like, I kind of nailed it pretty quick, but then I just had to fine-tune my flour and then my actual recipe. Like, the recipe is, like, straight up ground up. Like, the temperature, the time, how much grams of this flour and so on, and like when I mix certain things. And so it was 9 months. It took me 9 months to nail this recipe.
Like 42 weeks?
It was a really long, but
human gestation period.
All throughout it though, like I was selling versions of it, and people were like, oh, these are amazing. I'm like, oh, they're good, but like I still want this. And then I would have to like add a certain flour and so on. Mm-hmm. And finally, like that 9 month mark was when I'm like, oh man, this is what I wanted. Like I wanted it to be chewy on the inside, crunchy on the outside.
So donuts are your third child.
So yeah, donuts are third child. So then It was like I backed myself into a corner, because then now that's kind of the
expectation.
That's the number one seller. Is the vegan gluten-free donuts.
I love it. Yeah. Let's wrap with what you want listeners to know about the place, whether it's your classes, the cafe, anything. Maybe let us know the address. Any kind of social media presence you might have. Yeah.
So Erin Red's on social media. I'm not on social media. She runs the Instagram. So that's the Butterfly Joint is the handle. We're at 45th and Cabrillo out here in the outer Richmond on 4411 Cabrillo. And yeah, we're open every day. Our whole thing is basically focusing on like hyper local goods. We have pop-ups here that highlight people we meet at the cafe. So everything that happens here has something to do with people we meet at the cafe. So when we do pop-ups, it's all people that are neighbors that do interesting things. Like they have a ceramic side gig, or one of our favorite people up the street, she has these art towels, or plunge towels. So it's like she works with artists and makes these like limited edition art towels. And we just kind of like to throw things here. We usually will do something once a month, once every 2 months. We have big pop-ups or parties. And but yeah, the Instagram is probably the best way for people to find out about that stuff. I'm the analog side of things. So again, like I mentioned, I'm not on social media, and it's very purposeful. Like I am a very, if you know, you know. Yeah. So when people come to the window, like I will talk to them forever. I will tell them whatever I need to tell them. And to me, that's the reward of going to somewhere in real life.
Yeah,
and meeting somebody. So
especially post-pandemic.
I'm the analog advertiser. I put up the flyers and talk to people in person.
And I know you do a lot of events and pop-ups and whatnot. Yeah. Is there a calendar, maybe on a website or anything, or is it mostly through social media?
Yeah, social media is the best way, because they're so spontaneous. Like I know of ones coming up that there probably won't even be. They will be before this comes out, probably. But
do you post a calendar?
We always post
analog calendar out there.
Not even so much a calendar. It's literally just the poster for the individual thing, because they're so. Sometimes they come up spontaneously, and then sometimes we'll have them planned out.
So it's either follow the Butterfly Joint online for these events, or come here.
Yeah,
get a cup of coffee and a donut.
Come here. If you meet us, you'll know everything quickly.
Yeah. And what about the listeners who have kids who might be interested in?
Oh, so that's the butterflyjoint.com, and it's kindergarten and up. There was a moment where I did some toddler classes. Okay. That was actually the all the way from when I started until November.
Oh.
Yeah, it's just when the addition of the cafe and the donuts and like, you mentioned my energy. It's funny because like when you have energy like this, people don't think you do much. You see what I'm saying? It's a weird.
Because
they're
you're
like,
just moving around all the time.
Or not that you don't do much. They don't see that you wake up at 4:30 in the morning and make donuts, and then you teach a whole camp till 3 p.m. and then you know what I mean? Like I have long days, but I'm just an energetic person, so on. But I had to start cutting things out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So people are like, "Oh my gosh, you got rid of those? Why?" I'm like, "Well, I have 2 children.
And there are still 24 hours in a day.
I wake
only.
up really early. I do a lot in a day. So, but yeah. So that the website, if you have a kindergarten, if you have somebody who's going to elementary school age child and up, anytime school is out, I run camps here for the kids, and then the cafe. We're here all the time. We love meeting new people. People come from all around the city to here, which is really fun.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on the podcast, but more importantly, thank you for doing this.
Oh, thanks. Thanks
obviously,
for coming. Thanks for having me.
This is what drew me to you. Like, I love it, and whether you recognize it or not, you talked about like your life and getting through life, but I'm like, but you're also bringing good into the world. Oh, I may.
No. Oh, thank you. Yeah, and honestly, that's literally the thing that keeps me going. I couldn't imagine doing anything else.
That was Danny Montoya from Butterfly Joint and Café. On the next episode, I'm very excited to celebrate Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month with an episode all about TNT Tricycle and the amazing humans involved with that. Episode 16 drops next Tuesday, wherever you get podcasts. Music for Storied San Francisco was produced, performed, and curated by Otis McDonald. Erin Lim of Bitch Talk Podcast is our contributing producer. And the show is produced and hosted by me, Jeff Hunt. Now in our 6th season, we have more than 200 episodes available on our website, storiedsf.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're able to, please rate and review the show, and drop us a line at storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Keep rejecting those silly doom loop narratives about our city. Stay wacky, weird, healthy, and creative. And we'll see you next time on Storied San Francisco. We acknowledge and respect the first humans of the unceded land we call San Francisco, the Ramaytush Ohlone. We condemn the genocide of these and other tribes across the Western Hemisphere. We honor their legacy and history, and we support rematriation and sovereignty efforts.
This podcast is a proud member of the BFF.FM podcast network. Learn more at podcast.bff.fm.
BFF.FM, best frequencies forever.